Welcome to the Savage Executive Podcast. This is wisdom for the weight that you carry. I'm Steve Smith, and whether you're running a company, leading a department, or building your first team, this is where faith-driven leaders come to sharpen. Let's get into it. I want to ask you a question, and I want you to give me an honest answer, not the aspirational one, not the one that sounds good if someone's listening, but the one that's actually true. Could your team run for 2 weeks without you? Now, I'm not saying survive or limp along until you get back, but actually run. Could real decisions get made? Could customers or stakeholders get served? Could problems get identified and resolved? Could the work actually move forward without you available to weigh in, break ties, answer questions, and smooth things over? I'm not just asking the CEOs and the executives. I'm asking every leader that's listening to this. The department head, the team lead, the ministry coordinator, the project manager with 5 direct reports. Could your area of responsibility function, genuinely function, for 2 weeks if you stepped away? For most leaders, honestly, at every level, the answer would be no. Maybe they'd hold it together for a week, maybe a few days before something escalated or something stalled or waited in someone's inbox until you got back. Maybe no one is sure who has the authority to actually decide. And I want to be direct with you about what that means, because it goes a lot deeper than vacation coverage. If your team can't run without you, you have a ceiling on your growth, because you can never fully focus on the work that only you should be doing. You're too busy being the person everyone else needs. A ceiling on your organization's scale because you are literally the constraint. There's a ceiling on your people's development because they can't grow into real responsibility if you're always the one holding it. And a ceiling on the value that you are building, because anything that requires your constant presence is worth significantly less than something that functions as a system. Today, we're talking about how to build a team that runs without you. Not so you can disappear, but so you can lead at a genuinely higher level. Building a team that runs without you is a climb. I call it the autonomy ladder. 5 rungs, and the honest truth is that most leaders at every level are permanently stuck on rung 1 or 2. Not because they don't have capable people, because they have never intentionally built toward anything higher. So let's talk about these rungs. Rung number 1, you do everything. This is startup mode. New business, new team, new role. You are the product and the operator and the customer service department. Everything runs through you because you're the only one who knows how, or the only one there is. This rung is appropriate early. It's unsustainable past early. If you've been in your role for more than 12 months and you're still on rung 1, that's not hustle. It's a structural problem that's going to limit you. Rung number 2 is you do and they watch. You've built a team. People are around, but the execution is still yours. They observe, assist, hand you things, but they aren't driving anything independently. This is the rung where the large majority of managers live permanently. They hired people, but they didn't build a team. They have headcount, but not capacity. There is a meaningful and consequential difference. Rung number 3, they do and you watch. This is the most important transition on the entire ladder. Your team is executing, actually doing the substantive work, while you observe and you coach. You are present, you're engaged, but you are not the one doing it. For a CEO, this might look like your VP leading the weekly operations review while you sit in the back and listen. For a department head, it's a senior team member owning a project fully, making real decisions, managing the work, reporting outcomes to you. For a ministry leader, it's a volunteer coordinator running Sunday logistics without needing your sign-off before every move. The transition from rung 2 to rung 3 is where most leaders stall. Not because they don't want to let go, but because letting go requires a level of preparation that most leaders skip. You have to equip the person before you step back. The equipping is the work. Rung 3 is also where real leadership development begins. Not for you, for them. You can't develop people as long as you're doing their work for them. You develop people by giving them work and being close enough to coach when they need it. Let's look at rung 4. They do, and you check periodically. Now we're building real autonomy. Your team executes. You receive reports. You intervene when genuinely necessary, not before. You have rhythm, weekly check-ins, dashboard metrics, exception reporting. You know what's happening without being in every conversation. You have visibility without constant involvement. This is where most meaningful organizational scaling happens. It's also where most careers advance. When your leader, your board, your supervisor, your senior team evaluates you, they want to see you operating here or above. They want to know your team functions without you in the room. Rung 4 is the floor of what senior leadership looks like. Let's look at rung 5. They do, and they improve. This is the highest rung. Your team doesn't just execute without you. They identify problems you haven't seen, propose better approaches, and implement improvements without waiting to be asked. They're not just running, they are leading. They are multiplying capability rather than consuming it. At the organizational level, rung 5 is the mark of a scalable enterprise, something that can grow beyond any one person's capacity. At the team level, it's the mark of a leader who has genuinely poured themselves into the people around them, and it obviously shows. You cannot skip rungs. I need to say this clearly. If you are living on rung 2 and you announce tomorrow, I trust you all, just handle it, you will not get autonomy. You'll get confusion. You'll get missed expectations and a team that comes back to you with every question because they've never been built for anything else. The ladder has to be climbed, rung by rung, with intention at every step. So how do you actually climb? 3 things. And these 3 things apply whether your team is 3 people or 300. First, document processes. If the way things get done in your organization lives only in your head, you cannot delegate it. You can assign it, but the person you assign it to will do it differently or come back to you with questions or create a version that doesn't connect to everything else. The process needs to be written down. Even a rough 1-page document, even a simple checklist is infinitely more useful than nothing. This is unglamorous work. Nobody celebrates the leader who sat down and documented 14 business processes. But it is the foundation of everything that comes after. You cannot build a rung 4 or 5 team on undocumented knowledge. You just can't. The second thing is decision frameworks. Here's the distinction most managers miss, and it's the one that makes the biggest difference. There's a difference between giving someone an answer and giving them a framework for deciding. If you always give answers, you train your team to bring you questions. They will never be autonomous because you've structured the relationship around their dependency on you. Every time you answer, instead of teaching how to decide, you are one step further from the team that you need. Frameworks multiply your leadership. What does escalation look like? What rises to you and what does the team own completely? How do they handle a customer who's upset? What's the process when a vendor misses a commitment? How do they evaluate a request for additional resources? Give them the thinking, not just the answer. That's what builds a team that can actually run. Several years ago, there was an aspect of our organization that I felt like I needed to be a part of every meeting. It had to do with providing tuition assistance for students within our school. This process takes great care and discernment. I finally realized that the other people in the room were more than capable to lead this process. We intentionally created a framework. It guided most of the decisions, and they were able to exercise proper discernment within the process. I was holding our team back until we documented processes, created a framework, and I got out of the way. Step number 3, feedback loops. You need a way to maintain awareness without maintaining constant involvement. The specific tools vary by scale. A weekly 15-minute check-in for a team of 4, a structured dashboard review for a team of 40. But the principle is the same. You have a regular rhythm of visibility that keeps you informed without keeping you in the weeds. Exception reporting is particularly powerful here. Your team knows clearly what they own, and they know what conditions trigger a conversation with you. Everything inside the line stays with them. When conditions hit the exception threshold, they bring it up. You're not involved in every decision. You're involved in the decisions that genuinely need you. Now, note this, for you that are team leads, the autonomy ladder works with a team of 3 just as well as a team of 30. The tools look different. It might be a shared task list rather than a dashboard, a quick weekly sync up rather than a formal review, but the principle is the same. Several years ago, I did something that made me genuinely uncomfortable. I told my leadership team that I was taking 2 full weeks off. No email, no calls, except for something that was a genuine emergency. And before I left, I asked them to define what emergency actually meant. Not generally, but specifically. What exactly would warrant you reaching out? That conversation alone was revealing because it forced us to talk explicitly about what decisions were mine and what decisions were theirs. And we discovered, sitting in that room together, that we had all been operating on different assumptions about that question. Some of them thought things required my sign-off that I thought they had full authority to decide. I thought some things were clearly in their lane that they'd been waiting for me to weigh in on. We had never actually made those lines explicit. The 2 weeks that I was gone, 0 emergency calls. Not because nothing happened, plenty happened. Real problems, real decisions, real moments of pressure. But my team handled it because they were ready. Because we had already done the work of actually building toward readiness. And those 2 weeks were the proof. But here's what surprised me. The preparation for that trip taught me more about the state of our organization than months of normal operations. We found that our exception handling process existed in people's heads, but wasn't written down. We found 2 leaders who needed clearer, more formal decision-making authority because the informal version wasn't enough. We found 1 critical function that was entirely dependent on 1 person, and we had never fully confronted how fragile that was. Every gap that 2 weeks exposed became a project, and fixing those projects made us materially stronger organizationally, not just for vacations, but for growth. I recommend every leader do a version of this at least once a year. You don't have to physically leave, though there's something clarifying about that. At minimum, prepare as if you would. Ask yourself honestly, if I were unavailable starting Monday, what would break? Who would be stuck? What decisions couldn't get made without me? Your answers are your development agenda. They tell you exactly where you're still the bottleneck and exactly where to start building. If you lead a small team, do a scaled version. What if you were out of town for 1 week? Can your team handle their core responsibilities without you? If the answer is no for more than a day or two, you have real, specific, actionable work to do. In the Word of God, 2 Timothy 2, verse 2, says, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." Paul doesn't say, work hard, do excellent work, and keep doing it as long as you can. He says, entrust what you know to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. 4 generations in one sentence. Paul was teaching Timothy. Timothy was to entrust reliable people, and reliable people were to educate and teach others. Every leader in that chain is receiving what was entrusted to the one before and then passing it forward. This is not execution, this is multiplication. Notice what Paul calls the reliable. He says, they will be qualified to teach others. Not qualified to execute, qualified to teach. He's not asking Timothy to build a capable workforce. He's asking him to build a multiplication engine. That's a different and higher standard. And it's the standard that every leader is ultimately called to. Not just can my team do the work without me, but can my team develop others to do the work? Are they building, not just executing? Building a team that runs without you is not abandonment. It's not laziness. It is the specific, explicitly biblical form of leadership multiplication. It is what Paul asked of Timothy. It is what every faithful leader is called to build. This week, 3 things. First, identify where your team actually sits on the autonomy ladder right now. Not where you hope they are, not where they'd be if everything was working well, where they actually are. Be honest, write it down. Second, identify one thing that currently only you can do. Then ask yourself seriously, is that actually true, or have I just never taken the time to train someone else in it? If someone could learn it, that becomes your development priority for this month. Not someday, but this month. And then third, run the 2-week tests. Do it on paper right now. If you were genuinely unavailable starting Monday, no email, no calls, what would break? What would be stuck? What decisions couldn't get made? Write it down. Everything on that list is a gap in your team's autonomy. And every gap is an opportunity to build. The autonomy audit is something that is healthy for every organization to run each year. It maps every function in your area against the 5 rungs and gives you a concrete, prioritized action plan for moving forward. If you'd like to communicate more, find me on social media at Savage Executive or email me at steve@savageexecutive.com. Next week, we're talking about something that catches every growing leader off guard. You'd think more revenue means more security. More momentum means more margin, but it doesn't always work that way. The episode is called When Growth Becomes Your Biggest Threat. And it's about the paradox of success. Why the companies and ministries that grow the fastest are often the most financially fragile, and what a savage executive does differently to scale without losing control. If today's episode served you, can you do me one thing and share it with a leader who needs it? That's how this community grows. one honest conversation at a time. And subscribe wherever you listen. Leave a review if you're able. And if you want to go deeper, head to savageexecutive.com. We have resources that are built for leaders like you. I'm Steve Smith. This is the Savage Executive, wisdom for the weight that you carry. I'll see you next Tuesday.